All right, welcome back to Mind and Magic, where we demystify the occult and talk about all things esoteric. Today, I wanted to discuss piercing the veil, what it is and when we do it. So let's get into it.
Shut the f*** up.
All right, so what is piercing the veil? First of all, what's the veil? Well, simply put, the veil is the covering or barrier between worlds. And so when we pierce the veil, we are symbolically entering and passing through that barrier between the worlds. And I say symbolically because I haven't had a ritual or operation where I have been transported to another dimension yet. But I do so to yield better results. So why would we want to pierce the veil at all then? What's a reason we would want to pass between the worlds? Well, the big one is working with spirits. Piercing the veil allows us to get closer to them to communicate with them better. So anytime you call upon spirits, invoke spirits, evoke spirits, you should be adding this to the beginning and the end of your operations. So at the beginning, we pierce the veil, and at the end, we reclose the veil. And it's a pretty simple method to do. We simply circumambulate around the magic circle 3 times. And every time we pass the east, we make the sign of the emperor in the direction that we're traveling, which symbolically pierces the veil, because we bring our hands up by our head and then we thrust them forward as we step forward and then out like we're stepping through a curtain. And then we make the sign of silence while we stamp our foot down while putting our finger to our lips. There are many resources on how to do the sign of the emperor and the sign of silence. Now, because I don't put myself on camera, I can't show you myself. So it's one of those things you're going to have to look up if you are unsure at all how to do it. The good news is there's plenty of material out there. So that's what we do to pierce the veil. We circumambulate around the circle 3 times, make the sign of the emperor and the sign of silence as we pass in the east, which will put us 3 layers deep, since we've done it 3 times. Then we continue on with our operation as normal, deal with any spirits that we are dealing with at the time. And then at the end of our operation, we want to circumambulate around the magic circle in the opposite direction, counterclockwise, also 3 times. But this time when we pass the east, we put out our hands by our head as if we're grabbing an imaginary curtain, and we close it behind us as we continue on counterclockwise. And because we pierced the veil 3 times at the start, we now have to close the veil at the end 3 times as well. Again, it's a good idea to do this anytime we're dealing with spirits in any of our rites or rituals. And it matters not what type of spirits that we're calling. They could be angels, demons, well-known spirits such as those in the Goetia, or even just calling upon your ancestors to help you out. It's not about the type of spirits that we're calling. It's about signifying that we are ready to communicate with those of that world. And when we reclose the veil, it signifies that we are done talking and communicating with those of that world, and that they should not follow us. It's yet another safeguard put in place that we are not to be bothered after completing our work. Those who end up with hauntings after working with spirits are those who do not take such safeguards. They are the ones who are not dismissing the spirits when they're finished. They're the ones who are not sealing their circles when they're finished. They're not reclosing the veil when they're finished. They just let the spirits run amok, which is never a good idea. It's like inviting a bunch of people to a party and then you have a few of them that just won't go home. You can't get them to leave. You have to tell them they don't have to go home. They just can't stay here. But before you get to that point where you have to get rid of them after their welcome is worn out, it's just best to do the protocol and seal everything up, including the veil that you've gone through. You do not open a circle without closing it, and you do not pierce the veil without closing it either when you are finished. That's just a good habit of practice to get into. All right? It didn't take too long to explain this one. It's a pretty simple concept to grasp. Real quick shout outs to our top supporters over at Patreon and Subscribestar: Ahmad Rashid, Andrew Baucamp, Bardan, Gene Metz, Howard Wolf, Yadiva Montalegre, Jordy, Joseph Gerben, Justin Standers, Madison, Nexus Voss, Nick Giacara, Rebecca, Renee Bitsevier, Starseed Brian, Wild Eyes, Justin Mai, Kevin Johnson, The Moon is Always Full, and a few others that do not wish to be named. Thank you so much for your patronage and support. And I will see you next time. Take care.